The story begins with Terry Richmond, who is cycling while listening to music when a police car strikes him, causing him to fall. Officer Evan restrains him and calls for backup. Soon, another patrol car arrives, and Evan mentions that he has been following Terry for the past 2 miles. Terry, however, denies this, claiming he never noticed the officer. Without a warrant, Evan searches Terry's backpack, while his partner, Steve, discovers that Terry has no prior criminal record. Noticing Terry's tattoos, Terry explains that he is a former Marine who served in the Iraq War. Meanwhile, Evan finds a bag containing a significant amount of cash in Terry's backpack. Remaining composed, Terry explains that he was on his way to the courthouse topest bail for his cousin, who had been arrested for drug possession. Despite his explanation, the officers inform him that they will release him but are seizing the money, suspecting it linked to illegal activities. Terry insists the money is legitimate, stating that he sold his car and part of his restaurant to gather the funds. However, they warn him that reclaiming the money will involve a lengthy process. Terry offers to accompany them to City Hall to resolve the misunderstanding, but the officers refuse and leave after releasing him. Later, Terry arrives at the courthouse and explains that the police hit him with their car and confiscated the money he intended to use for his cousin's bail. Elliot, the court clerk, informs him that the money has been seized and there is nothing he can do about it. Elliot also warns Terry that the inmates, including his cousin, will be transferred to state prison. Terry argues that his cousin cannot be transferred since he was out on bail. The situation becomes more complicated as Terry needs a lawyer, but none are available at the municipal court at that moment. As he prepares to leave, Summer, an employee who overheard the conversation, steps in and offers to assist him. They go to a cafe, where Summer explains that asset forfeiture is a tactic designed to dismantle criminal organizations. However, she acknowledges rumors of corruption, suggesting that the police chief might be misusing the seized funds. She warns Terry that attempting to recover the money could be a costly and time-consuming process, but she is willing to help. Summer also believes the $10,000 bail set for Terry's cousin is excessive given the charges. Terry reveals that his cousin, Mike, was a key witness in a homicide case, making him a target if transferred to state prison. With the transfer scheduled in a few days, Terry believes he still has time to raise the necessary funds. Summer agrees to assist him with the legal paperwork, and after thanking her, Terry contacts Mr. Liu, his restaurant partner, to request a $10,000 loan by Wednesday. Liu agrees to help. Later, Terry finds himself by a creek, where he spends the night. The following day, Terry goes to the police station to file a formal complaint with Officer Jessica. He provides a detailed description of the officer involved, even though he only knows the officer's last name and first initial. Jessica, recognizing who he's referring to, briefly steps away from her desk to address the matter. The scene transitions to Jessica speaking with Officer Steve, who has just arrived and is briefed on the situation. Steve approaches Terry and, in a firm tone, orders him to leave, warning that his complaint is unfounded and that he could face legal consequences if he persists. At that moment, Chief Sandy emerges from his office to intervene. Chief Sandy tells Terry that he's aware Terry was followed and treated with respect during the stop, but reminds him that he's dealing with serious allegations. As he speaks, Sandy flips his phone around and instructs Terry to turn off the recorder on his cell. Once Terry complies, the chief shifts his tone and refuses to discuss the issue further at that moment. Terry then proposes a deal. Return enough money to cover his cousin's bail and let the officers keep theirest of the confiscated cash, as his sole concern is securing his cousin's release. After a brief pause, Chief Sandy agrees to the arrangement and informs Terry that the case will be closely monitored. Terry is told to return on Monday to reunite with his cousin and finalize the matter. With the deal in place, Terry leaves, confident that his cousin's release is underway. On Monday morning, he rides his bike to the police station, eager for the reunion, but upon arrival, he sees a bus driving away. Chief Sandy coldly informs him that he arrived 3 minutes too late, meaning his cousin has already been transferred to state prison, leaving Terry with no options. Desperate, Terry chases the bus on his bike through the woods. He calls his cousin Mike, urging him to request protective custody and warning him of the danger he'll face in prison, with unusually high bail amounts. Even though she can't intervene directly anymore, she still provides him with information and helps with his cousin's bail paperwork. Quietly, she lets him know that the only way to get Mike out is by securing the money and a court order. However, she warns that the judge is unlikely to sign off on it. Frustration begins to take hold of Terry as desperation sets in. At the precinct, officers receive word about Terry Richmond, who walks in just as they re-discussing him. They check his background and discover he has no formal combat training. The chief steps out to confront him, fully aware that Terry tricked him with the Sokoled deal, making it clear that no one calls the shots in his station except him. He bluntly tells Terry that no matter what he says, his cousin's situation won't change. However, Jessica, one of the officers, digs deeper and finds out that Terry is a jiu-jitsu instructor for the 6th Marine Regiment. Hearing this, Officer Steve becomes visibly tense and steps out, weapon in hand, to back up his chief. The chief reaches for his gun, but Terry, moving like lightning, disarms him and uses him as a shield to get closer to Steve, whom he also takes down effortlessly. With both officers subdued, Terry keeps the chief as cover while more armed personnel attempt to stop him. With them under control, Terry advances into the station, locks the doors, and orders everyone to stay put. He instructs Jessica to watch over her colleagues, then demands to know where his money is. They inform him it's in the evidence room, where, alongside various weapons, he spots stacks of cash. He orders Jessica to count out $10,000 to fulfill the original deal. With the money secured, the ex-Marine forces the cops to assist in his escape using a squad car. Knowing he'll soon have every unit in the city after him, he understands time is running out to post his cousin's bail. He reaches the courthouse, visibly on edge, and heads straight for the clerk, Elliot. As one of his connections, Elliot speeds up the process so Terry can get the judge's signature quickly. However, the officer at the entrance has already been tipped off about him, and Terry hears other cops closing in. Steve, leading the armed team, makes another attempt to subdue Terry, who fights back even through multiple taser shots. Meanwhile, someone in the courthouse records everything on their phone. They quickly grab their belongings and the paperwork they promised Terry while he collapses unconscious on the floor. Despite being taken down, Terry isn't sent to jail. Instead, he receives medical attention before being escorted by Officer Ivanto Chief Sandy's precinct. During the ride, Evan advises him to listen carefully as they all pile into a car to continue the conversation. Sandy questions Terry about what he saw inside the station. Terry describes the massive stacks of cash and the arsenal of weapons that could supply a small military unit. The chief insists that all the money was seized legally and is meant to be reinvested into the community. But Terry knows that's not the truth. The tension between them eases slightly, and they eventually arrive at the hospital, where Terry learns that his cousin Michael has been attacked. Overwhelmed with grief, Terry blames Evan for Michael's death, as it was Evan who confiscated the money Terry needed to post bail. At this point, the police chief offers Terry a deal. He can walk away free if he hands over the large sum of money and leaves the county for good. If he refuses, he faces up to 30 years in prison. They also inform him that they've covered his truck and warn that if he doesn't pick it up by that same night, they'll assume he's rejected the deal and take more severe action. Later, Terry has a quiet moment off reflection by his cousin's body, mourning his tragic death. As night falls, he gathers his belongings from the creek where he's been hiding and meets Summer, who has been waiting for him in her car to take him away. During the drive, Summer reveals that she's been investigating records of inflated bail amounts in cases that don't match the charges. Buttery, consumed by pain and helplessness, tells her he no longer cares about that and suggests they stop somewhere to eat. Despite his disinterest, Summer insists that someone wanted Mikey in prison and informs him there are dozens of similar cases. Resigned, Terry replies that corruption in the state is no secret. While his only goal was to help his cousin, he no longer has the strength or desire to fight the system. He just wants to leave that part of his life behind. That same night, Terry gives Summer his phone number before saying goodbye to her at the property where he'll retrieve his truck. Later, as Summer sleeps at home, she wakes up in a panic, realizing someone has broken into her house. When she steps out of her room, she notices a substance has been injected into her vein, and to her horror, she discovers the intruders are officers from the precinct. Though weak, Summer manages to reach her bag and dial Terry's number, pleading for help. The ex-Marine rushes to her house, breaking down the door to get inside. He finds her still conscious, soaking in the tub. After pulling herself together, Summer confesses she can't go to a hospital, as tests would reveal signs of an addiction, which could cost her custody off her daughter and ruin her life. She explains that her daughter is with her father, who filed for divorce after her struggles with certain vices in the past. Summer had promised the judge to maintain a clean record, which was crucial for her legal and personal standing. Later, Summer decides to go to work, trying to act as if everything is normal. When she arrives, she's kayed in by the judge, who reminds her of the strict conditions of her job, given that the situation has been manipulated against her. They make her undergo a test to determine her state, and desperation sets in as she realizes serious consequences are looming. Meanwhile, Terry is accidentally spotted by a county patrol. with Steve being the one to stop him and order his colleagues to block the road. Steve asks the ex-Marine if their deal wasn't clear, reminding him they had agreed Terry wouldn't return. Terry responds that he only came back to help a friend and that after this, he'll leave the county for good. Out of nowhere, Steve throws a gun into Terry's car, attempting to frame him, and then shoots at him, grazing his back. The two men begin to fight, but Terry overpowers the officer, grabs the truck keys, and escapes from the other cops. Soon, all the county patrols are searching for Terry, who decides to drive his truck to the river, hiding it under a bridge before resurfacing, wounded. Terry calls Summer, and she tells him the cops have already warned her to leave town and Cuddy's with him. Terry tells her he has a place in mind where they can both go. Later, they meet at a Chinese restaurant where Terry hides out with Summer. There, they meet Mr. Liu, who tends to Terry's gunshot wound. When they're alone, they begin to discuss how deep the corruption runs. Terry points out that the situation would typically require a professional team to handle, but everything has been kept under wraps because of what Summer uncovered. They manipulate sentences to hold the accused for 90 days, then inflate the bail amounts. Terry realizes even the county judges are involved in this corruption, and he figures they need more evidence to expose the scandal to the press. But Summer suggests they should just take the chance to disappear. Terry flatly refuses, arguing that Chief Sandy will never stop hunting them since they both possess evidence that could bring him down. Summer feels guilty for dragging Terry back into this mess, but Terry, determined, believes he can avenge his cousin's death and expose all the corrupt individuals involved. They both visit Elliot, seeking more answers. Indirectly, Elliot points out the common patterns in all the cases Summer has been investigating over the past 2 years. That same night, the judge is relaxing at home when Terry suddenly breaks into his property. Though his face is covered, the judge recognizes him immediately. During their conversation, they discover that the county's corruption runs much deeper than they imagined. The judge reveals that the sheriff's office was supposed to be transferred to the state police due to an illegal search that resulted in a death caused by negligence, which bankrupted the county. It took them a year to clean up the mess, at least in paper. Apparently, plenty of people wanted Chief Sandy out of power, and they had the means to make it happen. However, within his first month of asset seizures, Sandy had pooled in $100,000, cutting in the judge and other key officials, securing his position. Terry once believed asset forfeiture was a legitimate legal process, but the judge sets him straight, explaining that the money is used to settle debts, cover salaries, and finance public projects. He continues, exposing how the system preys on those who get locked up, keeping them behind bars for up to 90 days, even for minor infractions, until they're forced to pay bail with no other choice. He also reveals that county public defenders routinely request arrest footage, but since patrol recordings automatically erase after 90 days, obtaining evidence in time is nearly impossible. Before leaving, Terry ties the judge's hands to prevent him from calling the cops. But soon, they realize the old man has swallowed his late wife's pills, attempting to take his own life. Moments later, an ambulance arrives at the judge's home while Terry and Summer watch from a distance. They decide their next move, tracking down the patrol's recording discs, which might contain proof of Terry's seized money. Sneaking into the basement of City Hall, they quickly realize they're not alone in the dark corridors. As they advance, they spot a gasoline trail, and before they can react, it ignites. Summer acts fast, holding back the flames temporarily, but they both know time is running out. When they finally reach the storage area, they discover the recordings have been destroyed. Thinking quickly, Summer salvages the SD cards from the previous week, hoping they might still contain crucial evidence. Before escaping, Terry reignites the fire as a diversion while they evade the men patrolling the building. In a tense moment, Summer abruptly stops, insisting she needs to find something before moving on. They agree to meet in the alley, but as Terry presses ahead, flames lick at his feet, forcing him to ditch his shoes to avoid getting burned. Summer locates what she was searching for, but in the process, she's captured by the police. Watching his friend get locked up in a vehicle, Terry immediately takes off in pursuit. When the transport stops and some officers exit to switch vehicles, Terry seizes the opportunity, crashing into an abandoned patrol car. He forces the remaining officer out, demanding answers. The cop, unaware of Summer's exact location, is left with no choice but to contact someone who does. On the other end of the call, Steve makes an offer. Trade the SD cards for Summer's freedom. They agree to meet at Rebel Ridge at dawn for the exchange. Before long, it becomes clear that the location is swarming with cops. Meanwhile, Terry manages to reach Chief Sandy at the police station, but before he can get far, officers track him down, cornering him on a bridge. One cop approaches his car, but before they can intervene, Terry ends the call in a surprising twist, Evan is the one who finds the patrol car, only to discover his fellow officer tied up inside. Meanwhile, Terry, rather than being on the bridge, is right outside the station, using a truck to ram into the warehouse wall, attempting to break in and retrieve the money. As patrol units rush from Rebel Ridge toward the station, Terry confronts the chief, clarifying that he never intended to shoot to kill, just to make a statement. Then, he turns to Jessica, revealing that he knows she's been feeding information to Summer all along and asks her to look after her friend. As patrols close in, Terry hands Jessica the SD cards, holding enough evidence to take down multiple corrupt officers. He warns the chief that unless Summer is released safely, he will seize all their illegal weapons and turn them over to the state police, or burn everything to the ground. Soaking stacks of cash in gasoline, he prepares to act, but before he can, Jessica makes her move. She turns her gun on Terry, forcing the ex-Marine to surrender. Jessica alerts the other officers to the chief's location and hands the SD cards to Steve, who wastes no time destroying them. He then informs Terry that Summer has been set free, but she's in critical condition, barely clinging to life after overdosing on magic dust. Just as Steve moves to finish her off, Evan intervenes, pulling his weapon to de-escalate the situation. But Chief Sandy swiftly overpowers him, making it clear that it was Evan, not Jessica, who had been helping Summer all along. In the chaos, Evan takes a bullet to the leg, likely hitting his femoral artery. Sandy refuses to call for medical aid, exposing just how ruthless he's become as he tries to justify his actions to the officers. Terry seizes the moment, grabbing a bag and dragging Evan behind cover near a patrol car. From there, he launches a full-blown counterattack against the officers. Despite his injury, Evan tells Terry how to access the car stash cam, capturing the last 3 minutes of footage, evidence that could finally expose the corruption in the department. Determined to keep Evan alive, Terry slows the bleeding while tension among the officers reaches a breaking point. Some refuse to engage, leading to a series of intense, close-quarters fights. With calculated precision, Terry takes down multiple officers, ultimately overpowering Steve in a brutal fight. He then activates the patrol car siren, securing the damning footage and buying time to get Summer to safety. Weak but conscious, Evan gives Terry instructions on how to revive her. Slowly, she starts to come around. Terry speeds off, but Steve clings to the window, threatening Summer. In a sudden turn, she regains enough strength to fight back, and Steve, losing his grip, crashes onto the pavement. Though a patrol car blows out one of Terry's tires, they soon find themselves surrounded. In a final moment of tension, Jessica makes a bold move, intentionally ramming her car into Chief Sandy's, clearing the path. In a surprising turn, the remaining officers make the call to escort Terry, Evan, and Summer to the hospital. At the medical center, Summer and Evan receive immediate care. Meanwhile, Terry, exhausted yet determined, retrieves the footage from the patrol car's dash cam. With concrete proof of corruption finally in his hands, and his friends safe, he feels, for the first time, that justice is finally within reach.